want to share that we will be recording tonight's meeting. We do plan to share this recording publicly in the event that a student, parent, staff, or community member would like to know what was discussed. If you do not wish to be recorded, please let us know at this time. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Bonnie. I will call this meeting to order at 6:01. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Shout out to the HR department and the business office for working these past couple of weekends. I see them here all the time getting our employees, all of you guys all signed up and things straightened out. And thank you ladies, thank the other ladies for doing it. They've been here every weekend since we started.
Thank you.
I'm going to sort of piggyback off that just a little bit and recognizing that there are some districts in our area that are not back to school yet because of disagreements. And I need to applaud, again, our HR department and our leader for getting our very important and our actual staff too, communicating what your needs and wants are in such a way that we can get agreements together and have our kids back in school is so meaningful to the students and the parents and our community on the whole. So kudos to everybody for making that happen.
Yes, thank you for having us not be in that situation. I'd like to give a shout out to it was the middle school open house I was at, and that was just neat. It was fluid, it clicked, it went from one station to the next, and it looked like people had a great time. The community partners were out there. That was really neat to see people from the community representing their organizations. Yeah, I'm excited. It was a really, really neat event, and it went off really well. And so I just wanted to say thank you guys for that. It was a good start to a new year.
I think I'd just like to thank the principals. I've heard really good things about the beginning of the year. And that things have been really organized and things are flowing and kids are liking it. And I know that's a lot of work to make it happen. And I know the principals here work very hard. So thank you for making such a good start to the school year.
Very good. And the thing that I wanted to mention is that the board, we get the vibe, right? The vibe in the community when school kicks off. And sometimes it can be a bumpy road for some families, but I've heard nothing negative. I've heard kids excited to be in school. I've heard people making connections with our staff and our teachers, and it's been really positive. During my comments, I want to build on that momentum that we've had coming these first few days of school. And the board is going to be hosting listen and learn sessions for our community. It's been our longtime commitment to be transparent in our communication, to be accessible, and to invite conversation with our families and all community members in Orting. And so we've scheduled 6 listen and learn sessions. We'll post the details, dates and times and where we'll be, but we want to be out with our kids. So you're going to find us at the volleyball games, the football games, conferences, Red Hat days. We'll be there too. So please encourage your families if they have questions or just want to touch base with us, get to know who we are. We want to be just as communicative as our schools are. So thank you for all your work communicating with families, and we hope to follow in your lead.
One more thing on that, there's no such thing as a stupid question. I'm serious, I've had people come up to me and say, I know it's a stupid question, and then they ask the exact question I had 6 months ago. So when you see us out there, please come up to the table and just engage, ask anything you want. If we don't know, we'll figure it out. But that's what it's for. So if folks want to not be on the spotlight in front of everybody asking these questions, we're gonna be in the community for those. So private between us, I mean, as far as those questions, you're right there. You'll be able to ask them in privacy, and yeah, I'm very happy for that.
Yeah, for sure. And the other thing I want to recognize is all of our students who are out there engaging in all the extracurricular activities. And they jumped in. They jumped in before school even started. So we're really excited for the kids and to see them, whether they're performing out on the field or on the court or in their clubs. We're excited to see their experiences and their work over the next few months that we have with them. So.
And the golf team beat both White River and Union.
And White River was state last year, so that was a big win. So as a senior. So, cool. All right. So, any last comments, recognition?
I did notice one other thing here, that for all of us that have been to school or have children that have gone to school, we know that transition from elementary school to middle school is kind of a tough one. And I'm really glad to see that our middle schoolers, the 7th and 8th graders, they kind of, they go out of their way to be there for those middle schoolers as they're coming up and take them under the wing and show them around and mentor them. And I think that that's just a fabulous thing, the student voice, getting them active and caring for their fellow students as they're coming in. Middle schools, it's tough. It's tough, and so I think that that's a pretty special thing for our middle school students to do.
All right, very good. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. So the next item on our agenda is introduction of new staff. So I'm always excited about this meeting. I believe this is first session, right? We have so many new people.
We do. Good evening, President Thibodeau, members of the board, and Superintendent Katzenbieler. We are so pleased to share with you that of our 320-some employees, that we have 50 new hires this year. Some of whom were able to join us this evening, and we'd like to introduce them to you with each of the supervisors from the department or schools presenting our staff to you. So we will start with, I think you've had a little touch base with a couple of new hires under Ed's direct supervision, but we'll start with Superintendent Katzenbieler.
Sure, so I won't go into the same biography we did last May, because you did meet her a few months ago, but with us in the house, starting her first year as principal, is Principal Nikki Mesa at DTR.
We also have Executive Director Willis, who had 3 new hires join his team this year, and I believe
At least
One
one is here.
showed. I hope I don't put Ostendorf, right? Yes. Well, it wasn't Ostendorf. She was a contractor with us last year, and she said, you know what, she must have loved it so much, she wanted to come back for another. We're so happy to have her. And she's also, by the way, pretty cool. She's also an ultimate Frisbee player. So, I want to have you welcome Melissa.
And now, if Cliff Freeze, Principal Freeze, would join me at the podium here, and all of the new staff from Orting High School, would please come forward.
Yes, we got to hire a few staff this year. A few of them are ads based on the Carter family growing, so I'm very proud of the 2 women we have up here today. First of all, I'd like to introduce you to Anna Hager. Anna's a new counselor. We were able to add a counseling position at the high school due to our growth and retirement of one of our staff members. Anna joins us from Decatur High School, where she had a really powerful internship and really impressed us in her interview, and she has already done amazing things, and we're still yet another good one, so I'm really excited about Anna. So, Anna Hager. And then we have Amy Caledon. Amy joined us from Bethel School District. She has a really strong background in co-teaching, which is something we know that we're doing at the high school, trying to integrate our students with IEPs into our general education environment. So she's going to be really useful to us with her background to help us be successful for all of our students. So I'm excited to work with Ms. McCallum.
I got it. Although you could have too. I'd like Kevin and Earl to join me, principal and assistant principal from Orting Middle School, to introduce their new staff. And if their staff would come up and join
Got
them.
one
that would be
Well, good evening, board, board president, school board, and Superintendent Hatzenbuehler. Kevin Collins, I'm the principal, and
Earl McBride, assistant principal. Thanks for having us.
thanks so much for having us tonight. We have 11 new hires at the middle school, and we're so excited. We have 9 of them joining us here tonight. So I'm going to start with Kimberly Anderson. Kimberly teaches 6th and 7th grade ELA at OMS. She attended Utah State University, has over 16 years of teaching experience, most recently at Ford Middle School in Franklin Pierce. Her favorite thing about teaching and boarding so far is a culture that values students as whole people. Welcome, Kimberly.
Next is Riley Beats, who teaches 7th grade math. She attended Mississippi State University and got her master's at Seattle Pacific. It's her first year teaching math, but she also did her student teaching at Orting Middle School last year. She says her favorite thing about Orting is the tight-knit community, which reminds her of her own hometown. Riley Beats.
Next up, we have Emma Cash. Emma teaches 6th grade and 7th grade social studies at OMS. She attended Eastern Washington University, and this is her first year of teaching. Her favorite thing in Orting so far is building relationships and getting to know her students and already seeing growth in their academics. Welcome, Emma. Elizabeth Coleman-Davidson. Elizabeth Coleman-Davidson teaches 7th and 8th grade ELA at OMS. She attended the University of Washington, and this is her 3rd year of teaching. Her first 2 years were at Olympic Middle School in Auburn. Her favorite thing so far about Orting is being able to mix strict and silly while still having fun and attaining high levels of learning with her students. Welcome, Elizabeth.
Next, I'd like to introduce the new band director, Colin Greenling. Colin attended Bowling Green State University for his bachelor's and the New England Conservatory of Music for his master's. This is Colin's 7th year of teaching, and he was most recently in a middle school in Houston, Texas. His favorite thing about Orting so far is the willingness of the students to welcome him into the community. Colin Greenling. Also, I'd like to introduce Sarah Mancinides in science. Sarah teaches 7th and 8th grade science at OMS. She attended Washington State University and has 14 years of teaching experience, most recently at Edgemont Junior High in Puyallup. Sarah's favorite thing about teaching at Orting so far is that the staff has been so welcoming. She's also an Orting resident, so Sarah Mancinides. And in the math department, I'd like to introduce Philip Mike, who's been called Mike Phillip about 30 times. Philip got his degree at Western Governors University and his master's at Eastern Washington University. He started his career as a substitute teacher, and he has spent the last 7 years teaching 6th and 7th grade math in Wapato on the east side. His favorite thing about teaching in Orting so far is the sense of welcome by everyone. Philip Mike.
Up next, we've got Nate Miller. Nate teaches 7th and 8th grade social studies at OMS. He attended Central Washington University, and this is his first year of teaching. Nate's favorite thing about teaching in Orting so far is definitely all the staff. Everyone has been super nice and helpful in getting transitioned to the area and the school. Welcome, Nate. And finally, Kendra Sujikawa. Kendra teaches 7th grade ELA and 7th grade social studies at OMS. She attended University of Washington undergrad and her master's at University of Phoenix. This is her first year of teaching. Her favorite thing about teaching Orting so far is being able to develop relationships with many of her students and continuing to get to know them so that she can use their strengths and interests to make connections in class. Welcome, Kendra. We're really excited about this group. Welcome to Orting, everybody.
And the hiring continues, so now we have
Jen at the podium, please.
Good evening, board members. I'm excited to announce that we brought on 14 new Mountaineers to PTR 15, including myself this year. And I'm excited to announce those that are present with us today. So I'm going to start. We have Sydney Torrey. She is a new kindergarten teacher. Rachel Warren, 4th grade. Nicole Silrowski, 4th grade. I'm still working on pronouncing her name correctly. Delmarine Harris, 4th grade. Valerie Huff, art specialist. And I know it's Pamela, but her last name still is tricky for me. Zether. Thank you. And she is currently our LPN paraeducator in our life skills program.
Well, we have a little different approach today. We put together a collective resume for the new members of Team Ptarmigan. And so I want to share with you that our newest members bring a whopping 41 years of wisdom and experience with them to our building in such areas as bachelor's in elementary ed, early childhood, and associates in chemical dependency, highly capable training, ELL training. We even have, they're not here tonight, but we have someone in our building who has a bachelor's in nuclear medicine, which she keeps saying is not as impressive as it sounds, but I think it's extremely impressive. A few interests and hobbies of our group. We have a competitive horse rider. Raise your hand if you hear your thing. Hobbyist oil painters. Someone who says they're working on this and going to roll in a 49 Jeep Willys soon on campus, so keep an eye out for that. Fluent Spanish speakers, opera fans, folks who are really into gardening. And while all of these folks are 1 in a million, we have a literal 1 in a million. We have a new staff member who was born with 2 different eye colors, which is literally a 1 in a million occurrence. So we, and a secret Disney adult who's been like 25 times, which might be the most I've ever heard. So we are super excited about Team Ptarmigan and all that they bring to the table, and we are expecting, as you can see, just a fantastic year with all of you hires. So, welcome.
And our last team is from Orting Primary School, and I'd like to welcome, now I lost the note, oh, here we go. Principal Ellen Wood and Principal Alpers.
They're not this quiet, I promise. Well, good evening, welcome. We knocked it out of the ballpark this year. I have not been this excited about hiring in a long time. The Tacoma job fair was good to Orting Primary. So I want to start with Tiana Coy. She is starting as our assistant secretary on Monday. So we're so excited. She comes with several years of experience from maritime tote shipping down on the waterfront. She is an avid volunteer, so has experience working with kids, and just rocked her interview and talked about known for Tiana will help you. And that's what we want at our front office, welcoming staff, students, guests, whoever steps in our front door. And we know that Tiana will help. In our classroom, we have in kindergarten Jane Lyons, and Jane is a familiar face, but we have finally been able to officially hire her. She was a long-term sub in preschool, and then a long-term sub in kindergarten for us, even though we didn't realize we were going to get to keep her all year long. She stayed last year, and so she's officially with us. She has experience in several grade levels, but has found her niche in kindergarten. She's a mural artist, so if you walk across our campus and you notice some new paintings on the ground, we invite you to come play snakes and ladders with us. Her son is in 1st grade in our building, and Jane is just up for anything. So welcome, Jane. We're glad you're there, in a good way. 1st grade, we hired 3 teachers out of the job fair, and the first is Kaylee Bonine. Kaylee just struck us with her enthusiasm. It was so contagious that day talking to us. Her classroom is welcoming, organized, kid-centered. It's such a wonderful place to be. And Haley comes to us from Camas. She said yes, and we got her to move. She graduated from WSU Vancouver, and I'm pretty sure when she said Vancouver, she meant Orting Primary. So Ruth Mares is, she has been teaching since 2013 in the Federal Way School District. She is local here in Orting and really wanted to become part of our community. She has experience teaching 1st through 4th grade and experience with robotics club, helping write curriculum, building leadership. She's bilingual, and just, again, her classroom is such a welcoming place, calming, and kids are so comfortable there. Welcome, Ruth. In 3rd grade, we have Victoria Kirk, our 2nd of 3rd from the job fair, and Victoria, we all knew she was in our booth. She is electric. Victoria had an interesting journey the year before. She graduated with her master's from WGU. She started last fall guest teaching at Twin Falls Middle School and then did her student teaching in elementary. And so she comes to us, she has experience as a volleyball coach, loves the outdoors, and she has been knocking bookworms out of the park. And then we have several others who are not able to be here with us tonight, and Erin's going to introduce our classified staff.
Good evening. I was so excited I got to add 5 classified staff to our team this year, and I'm super proud of the additions that we made. I invite you to come take a peek and have just time with us in our building anytime to meet them. One of them, who I'm extra proud of, Susie Ball, tonight is with us, and she has a long career in childcare management, reading support, and most recently I kind of stole her from a colleague in Puyallup, which I'm not sorry for at all, and she's also a grandparent at OPS, which is extra special. At the elementary level, we get that a lot, but there's just something really nice about being able to have touch with grandparents and grandkids during the day. We're so happy to have her. She has brought an extra level of compassion and kindness to a very special classroom, and we're so happy to have her. Welcome, Susie.
So as you can tell, there's a lot of enthusiasm this year about the hiring, and if there's one theme that I've heard, no matter where I was on any given day during the August returning days, etc., it was that this group is joyful, kind, and just a welcome part of our team. So we're thrilled that not only these folks, but also their colleagues, totaling 50 people, joined Orting Schools.
Debbie, thanks so much. Yeah, and welcome all you new hires. And up here, frankly, trying to imprint your faces and memorize your names. I just invite you, if you see us out in the community, please come say hi. Please come say hi. I want to get to know you and for us to know each other on a first name basis. So welcome to Orting. We're a close community, and we hope you are excited about your next steps in your career here with us.
Yes, thank you.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome. Nice job. Very teams. I would say one more thing. There was the number of people who this is your first year teaching. When our seniors graduate, they walk back through our buildings and thank the people who made an impact on them. That's you. That's you. So just know that you matter to all these kids.
And there's a couple of Orting retired teachers on the board here, so we hope that you have a wonderful career like we did. So good luck.
Yes.
Yes.
That was so hard. Please go home. Is that
You're killing it. All right, here's your phone. Your keys.
Today for
I will do that. It's what you do. It's not fun.
She got it, okay. Represent.
I don't want to call her right up there. And
All right.
I'm gonna make a policy, if you can't name one song per album, you can't wear a shirt.
Honestly, I'm scared to buy it.
normal.
I know someone's gonna ask me and be like, I
Yeah.
have no idea. I'll be so honest with you, like, as honest as many years as you are. Yeah, I'm like, I don't know, it looked cool when I bought it. That's all she said.
I've been around forever, so I didn't do that.
One more introduction, and I will say, not only is Michaela's knowledge but Grace as well of 80s music, it is very in-depth, as we found before kickoff. So our student board representative at the junior level this year is Michaela Jeffries. She's joining us after an exhaustive search of the high school last spring when we had Principal Freese and I reviewed resumes and teacher recommendations and conducted interviews. And we saw a lot of bright, shining potential there. Really felt like she would be able to elevate student voice in a positive way. As you saw at kickoff, those of you that were there, our student board reps did an amazing job talking with our other students and getting their thoughts and ideas out. She's a golfer, a competitive dancer up till a year ago, not competing this year as I understand it. Visions post-high school involved going to college. She is, though envisioning not something in Washington, she's envisioning something warmer, further south-ish. She is has strong aptitude in mathematics and is looking to the area about engineering and maybe something in the biochemical. She is a Havanese dog who's also a certified lap dog. And she just enjoys people and those interactions. So welcome, Michaela. Glad to have you here.
All right, next item is community and staff comments, which I don't believe we had anybody on the sign-up sheet. It's not. All right. And I will turn it over to Superintendent.
Awesome. I have several things to share, but not nearly the amount that covers what's been happening since we launched. There are just incredible things happening in our system. And so since our last meeting in August, we have done a lot to set up and launch the school year. And so we're going to put some of those slides and just stories up there. The word of the year is connection, and that's really something that's not only embodied in our strategic plan and embodied in our 3 words, but we wanted to lean in and dig deeper into that to build from our strengths. And so thinking about that word, as we launched, we wanted to hear from student voices. So what does that look like in different contexts? And to start that feeling off right, we felt like what better way than just to honor our staff and celebrate them with our drum line, with our cheer. Our food service was out making scratch-based cooking, breakfast burritos, and we had a wonderful kickoff and launch, and our student board reps helped us lean into that and just kind of hear from our students about what does that look like and sound like. And not only did we have our students featured, but our staff as well. And that was a mixture of certificated and classified staff, so really that broader voice around that idea. That's something we continue to lead into with and think about how do we continue to use those relationships to leverage positive systemic change. And that moved right into some deeper levels of learning. So kind of your goal areas really are 3 big broad topics that we talked about that would be showing up in our strategic plans. One of those is that idea around agency and building that strong foundational student culture. I seem to have gotten rooted. So I'll just speak to it for a little bit while we figure out what's going on. So we're working on that idea around relational trust and deepening that learning, but then using that to think about how do we really improve the learning outcomes. So our staff spent a lot of time re-envisioning what does that K-5 focus on mathematics look like? What does the adoption of the new curriculum look like? We had teachers training teachers and side by side with our admin digging into it. And the other area that we spoke strongly about last year, which we had a lot of issues coming back from pandemic, was the climate and culture around behavior, social emotional learning. So a big rock this year that our staff dove into was around multi-tier systems of support in both of those lenses. As you know, you have brought in additional support and resources around social emotional learning and around intervention, and so we were putting those pieces together, and that led into first days of school, which I'll talk a little bit about reculturing and renorming around those expectations. Secondary was focused on many of those same elements and digging into standards and things like that to make sure they knew what those essential outcomes were. So we have a few pictures in there that we'll just kind of get to if we get back online, maybe. We'll see. So there's elementary and secondary collaboration, which led us into kind of when we're starting at the same time before school open house. We had strong partnership with our PTA, so at our elementary open houses, K3, K5, we had food services, transportation on site, ready to work with families. Middle school, as Director Slaughter talked about, we had a myriad of community resources and partners, and as you can see on the picture on the left, full stands. And that represented what our elementary open house looked like as well. So very strong parent and community partnership. And it felt like back to normal. This was the nice piece. We had people in and we weren't worried about being apart from one another, and they were able to connect and build relationship, and I think that's going to serve us very well as we dig deeper in this year in ongoing relationships. That moves us to first day of school. So we had a variety of photos. Our PIO put out a hashtag about first days of school, so families were sharing first day photos, and we just had a wonderful, wonderful lunch, which started with 1 through 12, and that fed us into kindergarten the following week. So we have a few photos up there for you and on our website and Facebook of the first days of school, and it was just a wonderful, wonderful lunch. And that fed our early intervention time. As you know, you set aside instructional time, which was very valuable to help us lean into the type of collaboration and the school level that's going to change learning outcomes for kids. And what we saw blew us away. So I don't know if you can see it super well, but we walked into the third grade team, which, by the way, rocked it in both literacy and math compared to the state average. And so what are they doing? Well, what are they doing is incredible deep lifting in terms of their learning on that very first week. So here you see a picture where they're talking about what the prior knowledge is the students are going to be bringing to them. Thinking about what are the potential misconceptions that they may have, what are the key vocabulary words that they're going to need to know, how do we really equip them with tools and resources. So I have some chair legs in the way, but Mr. Lee and I, when we were rocking, we're like, holy crud, that is just incredible early first collaboration. So we were really excited to see what our teachers were already talking about, which is a feed in and why you have a strong launch to get that work moving in the right direction. This is kind of cool, not only because I was there, but because I think this will be a good story. It's the only district I know in the state where we have a team of staff that have been actively climbing volcanoes. So a group of Orting School District staff made it to the 4th of the 5th summit. And Principal Fries is going to be working on a summary. If you heard him last year talking about their school improvement plans, he was really talking about finding their summit, helping people attain that goal, and really stretching in that. So he's going to be working on a summary of that experience, which are many of his staff, not exclusive to, but many of his staff, and trying to get that out in the News Tribune and see if we can't get a story and some traction about what does that look like, and then make that connection to students and finding their summit. You'll hear a little bit of data about high school and beyond plans, and that's kind of some of the work we're trying to do is think about how do we get that work to be relevant, engaging, meaningful for our students, and so we think that'll be a nice way to bring some recognition to the system and then pivot from that idea. Mauricio Portillo, he's a high school Spanish teacher. He stood on top of that mountain doing first day videos with his students. Hey, this is Mr. Portillo. I'm on top of the mountain. I'm thinking about you. So he was using that already to launch learning with his kids, and it was just a fabulous experience. Way to bring learning together. Continuing, so if you recall last spring we had teams of K-5 staff certificated and classified heading to neighboring elementary schools. We continued that with our high school team. We conducted a site visit to a local high school looking at their STEM labs. What does that science, technology, engineering, mathematics learning space look like? What would be our values, what we want to bring to the new first phase of Orting High School? So there they are talking and interacting and getting their ideas, and they had a debrief with the architect team a few days ago. I think you're going to be really pleased with what you see, how that how that learning and collaboration with neighboring systems is feeding our thinking and really improving what we're thinking about with our growth and facilities, which will set us forward for the next 50 years. Pre-reduced meals, so just an update. We do have more forms being submitted than we did the previous year. Meals are not provided free of charge this year by the federal government, USDA. We lost the waiver. Right now, we're about 36% pre-reduced lunch, but one of the presses with this year's legislative session from Superintendent Brinkdahl, he will be advocating for that to be provided across the state. We don't know what that looks like, but what we do know that the threshold to qualify for free meals for all of your students dropped from 60% to 40%. So we're right teetering on that line really close. I don't have a current updated number, but when I put that on the slide, there are a couple hundred active applications you have to process. So we might be really close to that, and or it might materialize the year after, we're not sure. But because that is for pay, we have seen a reduction in the number of breakfasts sold. So last year, if you recall, we had really long lines. It was tough to get kids out because we were serving about 150 or so breakfasts in PTR. That number's dropped to about 20 or less. So we're kind of checking in and building that collaboration and the information out there. But if that shifts, that would be huge for not only our families, but families across the state. I did put up there, just so we had that visual in your board packet of what our listen and learn session, so thank you as a board for that commitment. I appreciate you speaking to that, Director Thibodeau. We will have information, talking points, treats and goodies ready for you, so when you come, that facilities crew will have that set up ready to go. And that will feed a town hall that we'll have next month. And what we can use from you as a board, whether you want to talk about that tonight or the upcoming board work session or in 2x2s, just a little idea about what would you like to do for the discussion format. Some ideas, we could create some slides around those talking points, and each of you could share a nugget or two about what we've been up to. We could have Cabinet do a presentation, I can do a little slideshow, or you could open the meeting, Director Thibodeau, and just move right into table talk, where when we did it for the levy last year, each of you sat at a table and other people could sit around you and join. So there's really no right way. We just want to make sure we capture your interest accurately and then plan accordingly so that when we do have that forum, we can meet your needs and goals and aspirations. And I believe that is all for this month, which is 5 minutes or less of a lot of work in the last months. So at the board work session in October, we think there's two really parts. One is around communication, which we want to talk about all the things that would happen between now and February 14th, including outreach, and we'll have just an outline for that of important dates that we've captured. We do believe that a financial presentation, a member from Piper Sandler will come and speak to you based on your last meeting about what does the bond package look like? What is the anticipated cost? What will that look like per thousand? So we believe those are the two topics, and so communication absolutely would be a part of it.
So we've got time set aside to discuss that as a group.
We do. And those are really the only two agenda items that I think we have at this point. We won't be ready for a deeper dive on the facility side for Matt's team until probably regular board meeting in October.
So the theme will be communication.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very much so.
Yes.
And in our upcoming listen and learn sessions, you know, as we get a chance to talk with the community, we really need community at the CPAC meeting. So we need to engage in community members in that CPAC conversation. So please highlight that with anybody who's curious or interested about growth plans. All right. Any questions?
I was wondering, where is the town hall being advertised or put out there? Does anyone know?
General channels we'll have website, we'll have our social media channels, we'll have, it's either Skyward or Parent Square depending on what we have online, but a push that will go to all of our families and constituencies.
Will all the buildings include that in their newsletter?
We can push that to them. We haven't discussed going to building newsletters, but we certainly can.
Because especially at the primary level, a lot of parents really read those, so.
Yeah, we can feed that in the CFAC meeting as well. We did push it to all our PTA partners, previous members. I think we pushed it to over 100 folks this week. So we do believe there'll be more push yet to come.
We might want to have someone tell the senior center so they can announce it there so that they know about it.
Do we keep a list of students that have unenrolled from the district?
We do have that information at Skyward, yes.
Would there be any way we could send the notice to them?
Skyward will flag any active or inactive, so if we push communication broad, we can I believe, set that up.
Okay. Good. Next item, student board reports.
Okay, well, I don't really need any help. I don't know, take the board anyways. I'll turn it up just in case. So what I have was just a quick little overview of what we're doing right now. So what we've mainly been working on is our homecoming events and assembly and all the fun things that come with that. So we've got our spirit week ready and prepared up at the high school. We've got a volleyball tailgate barbecue gonna happen before the games, help promote coming to games, volleyball, stuff like that. We have a scavenger hunt that may be happening or not. We're working on that one right now. The traditional Olympics, homecoming Olympics, and parade, which is a big community event. I know there's a project grad enjoyment happening for the senior class with Scoops for some of the profit on that Wednesday of the homecoming parade are going to come towards our senior project and stuff like that. That's less of a school thing, but I thought it was interesting. Our sports have been really successful lately. Golf. We came up there. Our volleyball won their game last night, and cross country actually, all three of like our boys varsity, girls varsity, and boys JV won the entire meet, which was not normal for us. So we're really excited. And I think golf is in first in me.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah.
Just beat White River and Enumclaw, which are like two biggest competitors. So moving forward, we should
We just wrapped up Pond Lake.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I know Drama Club is planning their first play already, and I know a lot of the other clubs are starting to come up with their first meetings and stuff like that. I know Tabletop Gaming and FBLA and FFF. And next Wednesday, I believe. I won't talk about it. We're having an inter-high meeting with some of the other schools in our region to discuss equity and sportsmanship and just connection within our sports and stuff like that. And the theme is superheroes, just to make it a little more fun and exciting. So yeah, that's what I
I
have.
feel like I need to do that for my business meeting. Superheroes.
I have
Let's
like
talk budgets.
we got like superhero slap bracelets.
Oh yeah,
And
and masks, and masks.
I was like, we're gonna go all out.
Oh,
for
that's
this.
Oh yeah, we got some like decorations we're gonna put up in I think we're using the wrestling room, so we're gonna put them up in there.
Fun.
Yeah.
Just kind of our way to see what other schools are doing, and then kind of not take their ideas, but take their ideas and sculpt them into our own type thing. Just to see what they're doing, what's working for them, and then for us to share what we're doing and what's working for us. So I think it'll be really cool.
How many schools are attending?
A lot.
Oh, quite a few.
It's like ranging all the way to I think our furthest school is Clover Park.
Yeah.
I think that's what Ms. Alman was saying today, is that our furthest school is Clover Park.
I think that
we're from, yeah.
it's 5 or 6.
That's great.
They're all just absolutely. This many? 7, 8.
It's our lead.
I don't know how many people try.
So who does that? Is that your leadership?
That's,
or-
yeah,
It's leadership.
Yes, I know. Okay.
we haven't done anything since then, but I know we used to do them. And so I learned a lot from going there and taking the stuff back then.
That's super awesome. That's really cool.
Anything more you want to add?
And that pretty much covers it. She covered most of the working so far. I just typed up the stuff I had in my head real quick. I was like,
Are you doing your homecoming displays in the hallway?
Yes, we will be having hallway decorations again.
Okay.
Yeah, we're currently trying to decide on the theme.
Yes.
Because we had a theme and then decided that we didn't like that theme. So now we're having kids vote on what theme they want.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Excited. Very good, thank you. All right, facilities update. I don't know, Liz, would you like to do this from your chair?
Yeah, it does it so well. I'll chime in for sure. You can start, but yes, I'll probably stay seated. I might talk a little bit.
I don't think we got too much here tonight. It's a fairly brief one.
Yeah.
Side buttons. I might have turned it off.
Really don't have much.
Yes, okay. Couple quick updates and a little discussion on the outreach opportunities. So I think we covered a lot of this last time when we talked. We've continued to go on, but one thing we haven't talked about is PTR. So I thought I'd revisit that real quick and kind of share with you sort of the current assumptions, and you can kind of weigh in a little bit on that. But basically, the white outline here is just a drawing of the existing school on top of the aerial photo. The colored portions are what we're proposing as part of the PTR project. So what this involves is a new classroom wing over here, which would be about 8 classrooms. That's on top of the grass area. In there, this is the mega portables, just to put you in the right spot here. And then we have a new gymnasium in orange, which is on top of the other kind of grass area on the other side of the cafeteria, so that you don't have to share space between the cafeteria and the gym. We need to do a little bit of addition to the kitchen, so we need to expand that a little bit, so we're proposing a small expansion of the kitchen as well to make that function better. And so that's kind of the primary scope, and then I thought I'd walk you through just a little bit, a couple of the details. Probably a little tough to see here, but I'll just highlight a couple things. So,
Matt,
we-
really quick on that addition.
Yep.
What's the space in front of the classrooms between the buildings that was
I was hoping you would just like not. Basically, it's intended for some of the support spaces we need, like restrooms, electrical rooms, and potentially a small specialty classroom space, but it's mostly the support spaces. We have a little bit of work to do to get this layout a little bit better, but at least the locations. So up at the top is budgeting for the building piece, and I want to highlight a few other things here. So we have kind of from here down some renovation work that we're proposing in the existing school building. So this renovation is intended not to be moving walls around and doing kind of big structural renovation, but to make other improvements that will help to bring the level of PTR up so it's more equitable with the new school once you have the new school. So this would be things like replacing the carpet. We have other, I just call it remodel / update finishes. We haven't defined exactly what that is, but as you walk around the school, there's kind of both some, just minor repair and updating, making things kind of look fresh and new, new paint, some other kind of things like that. We know that we need some new classroom technology, so the goal here is that for each of the classrooms at PTR, they would be equipped with whatever technology we're putting into the new school, so the two have the same kind of classroom technology. And then right now we have just an allowance for other miscellaneous maintenance items that we know any school needs. So that's kind of what that is. It's not exactly defined. And then we have sort of parking and play improvement. So we currently have an allowance. We know that the grass area where that addition is going is sort of the least soggy, least wet of the play areas out there, so we're gonna be building there, so we wanna kind of do some improvements to help with that. We chatted briefly about that with the elementary group today, and they seem to kind of like that concept of, we have enough space overall, but we need to make some improvements to improve the quality of the play space a little bit, especially during the addition. So that's what that's for, and if we can swing it, we want to do maybe some minor improvements, see if we can make a little bit of improvement to that west area, which is very crowded, as you all know. So that is kind of just, we're going to try to do the best we can there, but mostly we're going to focus on the building and the playground area.
Is there quite a bit of paved space back there when you say making improvements to the play area? Is that replacing paved areas with grass, or is that drainage, or like what does
It
that?
could be. I'm kind of imagining maybe we do some drainage improvements to the grass areas would be one of the big things. We haven't looked too closely at the play equipment, but mostly I think it's improving drainage in those areas now, so we have it's a little better drainage.
Yeah, that would be cool if we could have.
Yes, so hopefully that's the goal.
It
And then,
surprises me, I was just gonna, are you finished or no?
Well, I was going to highlight one of the things on this list, which is furniture. So our goal here is, of course, we need new furniture for the new classrooms, but then we also want to be able to get some new furniture in the other classrooms. We won't be able to replace all the furniture in the entire school, but we want to make, get the most heavily used furniture and get some new furniture there. So that's our goal. That's also included in here.
I was just wondering, I don't know who I asked about this, but it surprises me how many people still do not know that the school district has purchased that area, because people were asking about it online the other day.
Okay.
Are we gonna put a sign up or something that says
Future home.
home?
that would be-
I just, because I'm just surprised that so many people don't know. They just, like, they asked, we want to take pictures, who owns that? But.
Can we put a sign up there before we have? I don't want to say future home until the community says you can build.
Yeah.
Or purchased by owning school, I don't know.
Future home, maybe.
Please
Up to you,
What
Orting.
say you?
This could be. That's a good question.
People will get used to the fact that the school owns it, and so.
I did hear that announced at a football game.
Oh.
It was actually announced at the football game. If you look at, they just kind of made that kind of general, sorry for taking over your thing, generalized statement about the piece of property across the way, and that hopefully someday it could be a new 700 elementary school for the district. But,
I could say, well, the school district owns it, $30 per picture for fundraiser.
There you go. Yeah. I like the creative ideas, keep them coming. That's good. Any other questions on PTR? I just wanted to bring that back up because we haven't talked about that in quite a while.
You mentioned the furniture, that would be furniture for the new addition, furniture for the whole school.
Furniture for the new addition plus some furniture for the new school, not like a complete replacement. That would be too much.
Yeah.
We have to get deeper in the budget in the building and know what's available. And the big idea is once the elementary teams come up with a standard of care in addition to what a classroom looks like, the goal would be to replicate that through all of K-5, but you won't know for a long time of where things are sitting to know how far we can get. So you get as far as you can get, you make sure the promises get made and kept. And then over time, we look to see how we continue that work. But part of that process, Liz and her team will walk our team through looking at different vendors and setups and things like that, and probably back to the tour and come up with what is our vision for standard of care. But the lights, the paint, and the floor covering will help that to look like a brand new facility. That alone would be amazing.
All right. This we went over last time. I just kept it in here just in case there was any needed discussion. I think we're probably good for now, unless you tell me otherwise. Okay. Same thing here. We kind of covered this last time. I don't think I have any questions at this point. And then milestones. I think we went through most of these. So these are the key things we talked about. Some of them last time. But again, we have, as we said, October 20th board meeting will be our next time. We'll be kind of dive into the next round of detail that we're able to kind of give you as we're updating estimates and working through some more of the detail. And then we have November 3rd and 10th, as you are making your final decisions. The other thing that I think might be on this next slide, no, it's not, I was just gonna mention, you mentioned CFAC, so that's actually coming up just before here, so October 4th, so we're getting ready for that. And a couple things that have happened that I think have helped us along that way is on Monday, we met with the high school group, so I got some really good feedback from them, so we know kind of what revisions and updates we need to make to the plan for the first phase of the high school, so I think that's great. We talked through some of the practicalities of how are we gonna deal with construction on site and stuff, so all that was really helpful for us. So we're making those revisions and we'll be able to kind of share that back with the principal and then eventually share it as well as CFAC, so that's our plan there. We met with the elementary schools, as was mentioned earlier tonight, just today, to kind of go through the elementary design and PTR, so that was also really great. Yeah, so they gave us a thumbs up on, yeah, that's what we talked about before, looking good, and they gave us some small comments on some things we need to tweak, so that's also perfect too.
I have to tell you that the elementary teachers at LPS, they said that you guys have been great to work with. You've been really receptive. You've listened, and they really appreciate it.
Well, that's fantastic to hear. Thank you for sharing.
Well, I actually want to chime in, the minor comments are minor, so I want to say it's a good testament to their work, for sure. It's when it's like, when you have silence, it's always a good sign.
We do believe in our conversation with Matt's team and Liz that we'll want to do another CFAC meeting likely after you approve a final package. So we think the end of November is optimal, trying to stay out of right before Christmas timeframe. And then we're talking about available dates where those teams can be available for things that you're probably going to want to do in terms of listen and learns or town halls around that. So we'll have some proposed dates that we'll look at the next board work session of what that would look like. So we're trying to make sure we have everybody's calendar together, so after you take action, we can begin to launch, okay, here's the final package, here's these strategies, here's how you can help, here's updated designs or anything like that based on those conversations. So you'll see that October 6th.
I wrote down a couple things. When you mentioned about the kitchen at PTR, that made me think of, have we made any kind of decisions about what we're going to do about the whole central kitchen issue? Because we know that we don't have any of the kitchens that are big enough at this point in time.
Correct. So the big vision is with that expansion and the current central kitchen, we should be well good on our cooking preparation capacity through that second phase. In the second phase, high school would be a broader commons area and a broader central kitchen that would ultimately be able to serve capacity for 5,000 students. We think that won't get us to where we need to be in the 2030s, but get us up to that phase.
It was because we had talked about solving multiple problems within the plan, and that had been one of the issues. And then the other one that hasn't been discussed, which is, somebody brought it up to me today, is the bus garage. Because as we know, who went on the tour, there's some place that's likely to fall apart.
Yeah, we can speak to that. So we've been looking at where does that fit both strategically and then logistically.
Right.
And so our conversations really put, one of the reasons why we would propose a turf field at the new Orting Elementary across the street is because that gives you year-round playability and access. The other piece that does is where the field sits behind Orting Middle. That's the likely candidate, and next to that where we have the buses to replace a bus garage. That gives us pretty good ingress and egress where we can move on either sides of the system. So we think, in our best thinking, that is the land that we have that is not wetland, that probably has enough capacity. We'll need somewhere around probably 3 acres worth of aggregate parking and shop facility, that kind of thing. So we think that's where that would be. We haven't officially put that into a phase 2 or phase 3, but we know that's on the list as our likely candidate of where to go. It's either that or next to PTR on the 4 acres, and we think that's not as favorable, because it kind of pigeonholes you how to get in and out.
Yes,
And
and
so
that
it's
is
not
already an issue.
correct.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad, I didn't think, I wasn't expecting an answer, I was just saying, oh, we gotta remember that building and maintenance.
Yes.
Thank you.
We haven't landed on what to do with downtown and where does a central office go or things like that, but we did kind of get our best thinking of where the shop and maintenance facilities would go.
Because they're kind of essential as
Correct.
And I think with that, you know, right now, we're kind of plugging in the maintenance facility in phase 2, and then the high school with the central kitchen as part of the phase 2. This is me speaking here, I haven't reviewed this with others, so we'll see, but I think maybe district office might have to move to 3, we'll just have to kind of see, but I think at this point, because we don't know how the growth is exactly going, I think it's good to kind of have some flexibility in your mind for exactly where that lands down the road.
I'm envisioning the teeter totter toilet, maybe in
Yes.
phase 3, and then that doesn't bode well for the team here, so.
He's like, what do you mean the teeter totter toilet?
Oh,
You guys don't know about
I
that?
haven't experienced that yet. Oh, okay, well.
It's not a board, you know, it's.
Okay. Well, maybe we need a small works project here in phase 1. I think we might have to elevate that. Okay. All right. And I think that's all I have.
I had a question, and I don't need an answer tonight, but I think it's more directed towards Liz. There was some conversation when we first started talking about this, about the different methods to which we would go about the process, and there was brought up the GCCM, and then versus the design, bid, and build process.
Yeah, I can give a quick overview. Definitely CPAC, I think, brought it up as an option. There's 2 great options that we don't have to make an immediate decision now, that we can talk about it as the project goes on. GCCM is, you bring a contractor on early. Basically, it's more of a partnership for that, and it's usually, you know, I'll say the word usually, on more challenging sites that are longer durations, occupied, and more of a high school level. It can be done in elementary school. There are projects definitely that happen in elementary school level. And that partnership is, you know, a long-term partnership. You interview early, and it's kind of a partnership between architect, owner, and contractor. There's an upcharge to that. You do have kind of more of a, Matt and I were talking about this, kind of confidence in the follow-through somewhat, because they aren't just hard bidding a set of documents. And there's more up for interpretation sometimes when that happens, if there's some conflicting information. Design bid build was talked about with CPAC 2, and that is a project where we're going through the design process, and we put it out to bid, and then that contractor builds the project. Those projects are more streamlined when you have kind of what you have right here with a new campus, a new site. You don't have as many logistics, and so that contractor can come in and build the project without having a lot of challenges that are unknown. So you don't have an occupied campus, you don't have kids that you're, you know, working around, you don't have utilities that you don't know really where they are. So the thought that when we talked at a high level, that for the elementary school, it might make sense to do that design bid build, because it's, you know, more enticing for a contractor to get that project, especially when you're working outside of King County. Sometimes it's more desirable to come with contractors, it's going to look upon as a nice project. But definitely there's no, and Matt can chime in, there's no decision that the board has to make now. It's something that we can talk about as the project develops and after the bond passes.
I was just curious and just trying to understand, yes, what the differences were, but I think you kind of hit on some highlights of to why the design bid build would be more beneficial. It sounds like it would be more cost effective, but
I found it to be more cost effective in my experience, as long as you get, you make enough connections with contractors that you're getting enough bids. So I feel like a lot of that is our job in the architectural contractor community to make sure everyone knows about it. And have enough, and I will say have enough experience and good reputation to have contractors that want to work with our team. And I do think that that's something that the district has done a good job, and there's really great, there's a really great reputation for Mark's office. So I think that would be, it would make a lot of sense for the elementary school.
And do we get to, are we obligated to choose then the lowest bid that comes across, or?
Lowest most responsible bid. That's
Lowest
the-
most, oh,
the
so there is,
RCW says
there's
lowest
a.
most responsible.
Most responsible, okay.
So I do think it's a balance. You want to make sure you have enough coverage. You're not just getting one bid. Matt, and feel free, Matt, to chime in too.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's a good summary, and I think I think that after passage of the bond, it would be worthy discussion of talking about that, especially for the high school, which is much more complex. There's a lot going on there, so that could be one that you would consider the GCCM process for.
Also, we don't have to.
You don't have to decide now. You don't have
But
to
it's
decide
not
now.
like the whole thing, it's not project one, you can separate.
Correct.
Okay.
You can do all three projects can be considered separately in terms of this decision making, so you can have this conversation after passage of the bond, and then we can make a decision about what makes sense right now.
Thank you, I really appreciate that information.
Any other questions? Now, Liz? Okay. Wonderful. Thank you again. We appreciate these updates. I feel like I'm a little bit along the line right now. Thank you. Yeah. Have a good evening. All right, next item on the agenda is prepared by Ms. Bannon, financial report. Okay, I have no questions.
No questions.
All right, so no questions on the financial report. Well done, thank you again. All right. Presented by Mr. Lee. Fastest report tonight.
As he's coming up, looks like we have to get some technology ready again. One of the things I wanted to share, just keeping in mind, so our commitment to you as we develop a strategic plan is to think of different ways we can look to measure our progress. Last month, you heard a lot about our student learning data from state testing. We do have some ongoing challenges about getting the testing data uploaded into what's called the school report card. So some of the traditional means we've talked about, achievement through the school improvement framework and such, aren't updated. So if you were to go to our district's page under OSPI, some of the data predates the pandemic. So one of the pieces that we're continuing to do is to set a vision for where we can go on the measures and the data, and some of that isn't readily accessible. But we do feel like we gave you some good updates on goal number 2 around the academic side. And what Mr. Lee's going to do is touch base on some of the other goals and some of the things we do have data points for, and some of the things we have to create and invent. Because when we knew we built that plan and went down goal pathways around agency, for instance, we need to think differently about what's that going to look like and sound like. And so we're still building that vision and a system to collect the data. So this is the best that we have today, and you'll hear some of our thinking about what can we do this year to get some data and look at some of these other areas so that we can really set the vision for how we're going to really move forward through 2025 and beyond. And Mike, he heard your feedback on ways to organize it, so we're hoping to get some feedback on how it's actually presented as well, which gives you kind of links and the ability to dive deeper as you have questions. So looks like he's up and running. Mr. Lee.
I gotta say, that's one of the best introductions I've ever heard in my life. So, I'm done, I think you dropped it. Pretty good, pretty good. So, one thing I'll say about Ed is that when he comes up with our strategic goals and plans, he doesn't sit in the dark room all hunched over on the same desk with, a little teeny tiny light. What he does is he goes out, I know, crazy. But what he does is he goes out and he talks to everyone who will listen to him. And I do mean everybody, including all of you sitting around this table. And so the question is, what makes a difference in our community? Like, what kind of schools do you really want to have? And what's your really vision? That's our kind of like, you speak. What's your vision for what's going to make a difference in terms of learning in the district? And so if we go to the next one, I'm going to have Steve help me out because I have lots of story with each student. Okay, there we go. All right. This is what not Ed came up with, but we, the collective we people in this room came up with this in terms of what do we believe is going to make the difference for students. And I've been leading with this in all of these PE sessions I've had with teachers, principals, even parents, and talking about what do we believe is going to make the difference. So the difference is that there's things that are kind of hard to measure, as Ed was talking about. Think about like feeling valued, cared for, and a deep sense of belonging. Those are really important things. I would say probably the most important things that we have. Those things are kind of hard to measure sometimes, and so we'll talk about that as we go through it. Know their voice, ideas, and interests that are utilized and valued. Who doesn't want that, right? Who doesn't when you go to work, when you go to school, when you're at home? Thanksgiving's coming up. There's a challenge for you right there, right? Develop a belief that you make a difference. This is really important. That goes with the agency element of that. Experience high-level support and having barriers removed to meet high expectations. You want to have high expectations, and that came really clear through our community. But we have to make sure that we scaffold that we actually provide those routes that help make that happen. So let's start with that. So that's our theory of action. So here's our goals. There's 5 of them. The first one's around agency. Right? I always think about agency, like all of you have agency. You just have it in spades because you showed up tonight, because you ran for an office. You believe you can make a difference. And so as you're reading this, you're making sense of it in your own respect. And some of you are like, well, maybe some of my constituents will have questions about that. So I better make sense of it in a way that makes sense to me so I can explain it. That's agency. And so when we think about like how do we impart that to students, it is the most important thing that we do because it's a long-lasting, lifelong skill. It's kind of like when I was playing football as a kid, they said, well, you're not going to play football when you're 50. They were right. But they said, you might play tennis. And that was true. And so the idea is that we want to give something that the kids, that they can take with them until they're 50 or 60 or 70 or 80, that they use every day. There isn't a day that's gone by using an agency. And so this is something that I think will really develop in kids. One thing you'll notice as I go through these slides is that there's pictures on the top part of this of students demonstrating their agency. We have a lot of PD that's, well, last spring and over the summer for students led. This is Riley who led a professional development session at PTR around, we'll talk about this big B, but that was 100% her voice. We talked about it a little bit beforehand, just I got it, right? So then these teachers and a couple of principals are showing her there. Actually, we're talking to her about a conversation around what empowers you as a person. And that conversation was amazing. When we did the presentation with Grace and Michaela, there was a time, I don't remember this, there was a student who was supposed to talk about their drawing, right? But it didn't show up. They used their agency to figure out what to do. You could have just froze, right? But they used their agency to run that. So how do we really measure agency as really the point I want to hear? So we talk about the high school and beyond plan. Every time I talk to Cliff Freeze about the high school and beyond plan, he goes, we don't call it that anymore. We call it the summit, the junior summit. And so next Thursday, they're actually going to have a summit meeting. They call it a listening session, and where students lead it. And we actually get together in the commons and actually talk about, like, how do you reach your summit? What are the barriers in the way? And it's really fascinating, and I welcome you all to come to that. I learn a lot from those things. But this goal is really about viability of that high school and beyond, right? Because when students graduate now, like when I was in high school, it's like, good luck, hope you make it. But for us, nowadays, it's really about, we have to give a plan, a development plan with students. And so we want to talk about the viability. Do students actually use that plan? Is it useful? Do they think about it? And we don't just do it this senior year, we should be doing it really all along the way. And so, in talking with the counselors, they really start the hardcore work right around 7th grade. And with that, they're actually talking about career interests and pathways and selection of electives and like what are your interests? Like when you're taking math, what are you thinking about? And so that starts in 7th grade, goes all the way through 12th grade. We're looking at student-led conferences. Now, Cliff Reese told me, I said, well, I might mention this to the board. He goes, I'm not committed to that. The way he says that, I will commit to this, that this year, every senior is going to talk about their goals in their classroom and with their teachers and with one another around what their high school and beyond plan, their summit plans that are out there. I said, well, you remember a few years back where students had an exit interview, where they talk about what they're doing after they leave their high school beyond plan? They are working towards that. And the middle school is committed to having student-led conferences as well that are centered on the high school beyond plan. So there's some great plans for that. Again, some things are hard to measure. This is one of those things that's going to be tough. And so if you look at, and you don't have to really click on those, you've all seen the high school beyond plans that are out there. Is that a good question? Oh, nice job. I thought
Holding
it
you
was
accountable.
Another one's around student reported agency. Could you click on that one? It says Panorama Results 2021-2022. So there's a social emotional intelligence survey we give to all students. And that starts in kindergarten, goes all the way through 12th grade. So right before school ended last year, we actually gave this panorama survey to all kids. In K1 and 2, it ends up being like a teacher perception, because kids aren't going to sit at a computer and like, do I feel like I can have a great today? Well, and it's like, I don't know, maybe. But so the teachers are really, that's teacher reported. But if you go to grades 3 through 5, that's really student reported. And if you scroll down a little bit more, it's really the 6 through 12. What we found is that we have a strength. There's a lot of very supportive relationships that we have in the district, which is, if you were to ask principals beforehand, what's the strength of your school, they would say that. And it's not just teachers, by the way. It's parents, it's bus drivers, it's the lunch ladies, it's the monitors, it's everybody, right? And so students are finding that they have that strong relationship. Awesome, right? If you look at the other elements, there's some things probably we need to work on. Like in terms of grit. And grit is that perseverance, right? When something's hard, you just stick with it. And a lot of students are reporting that, no, I give up, right? And so the idea around agency is that if we give them a voice, and we're thinking about a theory of action, if we give them a voice and a way to feel empowered through that, that grit's going to come, that perseverance, right? Why do you work hard? Because you believe that what you do matters, right? The next one is around student talk, belonging, efficacy, and ownership. Maybe Steve can talk a little bit more about this, but in August, they actually came up with a brand new way to evaluate teacher student growth goals. And every year, teachers have to set goals on how much they're going to get students to grow. If you look at, can you click on that link, please, sir? If you look at how they are actually evaluating teachers on that, there are 6 different, they call them like primary ways to measure students or critical attributes. Knowledge of students, number 1. Essential standards, important, that's always been there. But if you scroll down, put red arrows next to these for a reason. Cognitive and emotional engagement. They're being measured on whether or not students are actually engaged in their lessons. To be engaged, you have to have agency. Because you can't fake it. Like either you're really involved or you're not. Student engagement and assessment. So now when teachers are assessing kids, they have to actually measure, are they engaged with that or not? Do they have voice and choice? Are there alternate routes for them to show their learning? We're talking mastery here, right? And the last one is feedback from students on their experience of learning. You have to actually ask kids, how did you do? How did you do? Was it good? Did you like it? Did you get anything out of it? So these are all new measures that we're asking teachers to look at through their own evaluations. And so if we're looking for a measure of agency, this is going to come up. Kind of tell me something bad. Just around. Nothing to add to that? Nope.
So are you going to do a lot of training on ways to engage students so that because I don't know that all teachers really understand how to engage students. I mean, it's not something, I've seen a lot of students that aren't engaged. So are we going to, is there like in-services or, okay.
And go back to that collective we, yes, we are. And part of that is the student voice. So some of the most powerful trainings that I think we've done just in the last 3 or 4 months have been student-led. And if you talk to teachers at PTR, used to be there, ask them about the session where we talked about dignity and the student-led element of that. Most of the teachers, you don't want to walk through the building today, remember that. And so how do you engage students? So that they're seeing it. They're out there asking like, how can I get my kids to do that? So yes. The last measure here is our extracurricular activities engagement. So you look at 21-22 last year, 2/3 of OMS students were engaged in something outside of school, outside of the school day. That's a lot. That's a pretty good measure, I would say. OHS, it's a little over half. And so we're looking at clubs, like sports, activities. We are doing a great job in terms of involving kids after school. If I went back to my high school days, I'd probably say it might have been like 15%, 10% of the kids that were involved. That's a good indicator that what we're doing is right. And also the additional funding for activities. If you look at the way we've negotiated contracts with coaches, we're actually paying them more so they actually can reach out and go to, say, the elementary school and spend some time there. The activity bus that's being funded, that's huge, because now kids have a way to get around after school as well. So you're seeing real results in terms of that, and students are now being connected to school. So I can do this one, right?
Aaron?
Yes.
You might want to add to another bullet underneath the additional funding is how many kids rode that activity bus last year? It's huge. I mean, that's a fact. They're not riding that bus because they're not doing something.
Right.
That's a data point.
Yeah, and it's something as we move forward, as we're looking at, this report, it's going to be done throughout the year. And so these are things we're coming back to, and something that Ed's asked us to do. So that's a good goal. So goal 2 is all about academic achievement, and so we have 3 primary measures of that. Students meeting grade level benchmarks is 1. And so part of this, if you look at kindergarten readiness, could you click on that one, please, Steve? Students come into our system fairly well prepared. I mean, if you look at what percent of our students are ready for the cognitive work in kindergarten, it reads 82.3%. That's pretty good, right? If you go down and look at literacy's high, math's high, the physical part's really high. This is the readiness that they have when they enter in school, when they come into our system, that right now we have very little to do with, right? And so if you go back, please. Part of our plans, we start looking at the K-12, what do we do with that? Because if you walk into a classroom, teachers are working incredibly hard, but the presentation I gave you last time was showing that our data has a pretty big dip over time. And so it's not that we're not working hard, and I talked about this last time, it's that we're not working on the right kinds of things. And so Steve has been working incredibly hard in adopting a new ELA curriculum called Bookworms, and just implementing that, it's uncovering a lot of misperceptions about what is the right direction to go and the standards we should be working on. We're also doing that in mathematics as well. So do you want to add something to that, Steve?
Good summary.
Killing you, brother. There's a 4th grade slide.
What I would say is as we, with the Bookworms curriculum, it's a very structured curriculum. And what we're seeing in a very positive sense is what structure does to reveal kind of the gaps within a system. And so you can be like where I've been in the last 6 years here, where as I've gotten to know the quality of teachers here, I can't make sense out of why the student performance looks the way it does, because teaching is the #1 impact on student achievement. And but another impact on it is just the process by which we go with it. And so the inclusion of the Bookworm structure has kind of elevated some of the different kinds of issues that are resulting in the processes that we use and the consistency that we need. And it's pretty exciting. It's really kind of giving us a name and a way to identify it. And as we're kind of leaning into that with our 2 elementary TOSAs, who are phenomenal, by the way, and are in classrooms every single day, and are talking to teachers every single day, and are leaning in with professional development and support, and just they're just such a tremendous asset to that whole process. It's pretty exciting what we're seeing. So the best thing you can try to have to solve a problem is to be able to name what the problem is. And I think that this inclusion of this curriculum that we're doing has allowed us to identify that. So we're not throwing things against the wall and hope they stick. We're actually being able to identify some things that we can really target. We're just getting our feet wet. We're only in a couple of weeks. And we're seeing stuff already that's like, yeah, let's go.
Did we ever, and it's fine if you don't know the answer, but did we ever look at how the kids that did summer school, and then when they came back? I thought they were gonna do like a short assessment of how it's stuck with them from.
They're just now doing those assessments.
Okay.
So yeah, we're just moving into that assessment piece where they're doing some of that benchmarks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Steve.
You're more than welcome. I'm the AKA sidekick.
I'll take that.
Yeah.
So another measurement we have is around ninth graders on track to graduate. 70.8%. Now what that actually measures is if a ninth grader has one F, if you have one class, now they're considered off track to graduate. There are a lot of mitigating things we can do around that. Cliff Freeze, for example, can waive some of the credits if students are working towards a career pathway. And so that number is fairly misleading if you actually look at it. But there are things they're doing, like at the high school, they're focusing on ninth graders. So when they PLC, they're looking at 9th and 10th grade data. They're using a program called Homeroom, which I'll get to in a second, that actually is identifying students at risk, especially in 9th grade, and looking at what they can do to intervene with those kids. They're rearranging their schedule. So like, for example, they're taking a look at integrated 1 math class, which is for us like algebra, geometry. They're taking that year-long class and saying it's going to take us 2 years to really meet the standards there. And so they're actually digging deeper in some of the key standards that are part of that. So not rushing kids through the math. Yeah, so that's good. And so if you look at like, there's a rearrangement of the resource room, for example, and so the classes that used to be called the resource room, you put kids in there that had a reading level that could vary anywhere between 1st grade and 9th grade in high school, right? And so as a teacher, it's nearly impossible to really meet the needs of those kids. Not only that, but I may not be trained to teach kids reading. And so the best place for these kids is in their general ed classes with support. And so they've rearranged that model to really support these 9th graders as they go through as well. So a lot of really exciting work at State High School. If you look at the next bullet, student proficiency on state assessed grade level standards. I already went over the 21-22 spring SBA test results. Well, I think we've seen those already. We're looking at aligning our core instruction to these guaranteed viable outcomes. So this guarantee means that no matter what, as a teacher, when I bring a student through a unit of study, I will guarantee that every single kid, regardless of their disability, regardless of what's happening with them, I will guarantee they will learn that. And those are guaranteed viable outcomes. Guarantee means no matter what's going to happen, viable means realistically what can I do, and then the outcome is defined by those core standards that are out there. So, and again, Steve, I won't put you on the spot, but something you want to say to that?
The thing that we recognized last year and we're pressing into this year is the 4 PLC questions that we're very familiar with is what do we want kids to know and be able to do? How will we know? What if they don't? What if they do? Those are the 4 questions. What we really discovered last year is in question number 1, what do we want kids to know and be able to do? There's a sub-question embedded in that. What do we know about what we want kids to know and be able to do? And I think there's been an assumption for a long time that teachers understand the standards deep enough that they're able to make some of those really critical decisions that really help identify what kind of things are happening in the gap. And what we've discovered is that's not always true. And again, going back to the bookworms curriculum, is that's really, as I remember sharing with you, that we've got 2 kind of overarching goals, one a little bit more important than the other. The lesser of the 2 goals is to implement the curriculum with fidelity. That may sound like that shouldn't be the lesser goal, but the greater goal is implementing that curriculum with fidelity is actually teaching teachers about teaching literacy. So we want to develop our literacy instructional chops while we're integrating the curriculum. And the idea behind, and so what's kind of surfacing about that is what teachers really understand about some of the different reading standards. And what's really some of the finer grained pieces of that. The deeper they understand those standards, the more empowered they are. And the more efficacy that they'll have, the more confidence they'll have, and they will be better at identifying some of the different kinds of things, the instructional strategies, kind of assessment pieces, all of those really critical pieces that are so important to teaching. But they'll start with that really core understanding of what it is really supposed to look and sound like. And so as we're doing some of this stuff like creating the pacing guides or the unit guides or whatnot like that, we're really unwrapping these standards and just pulling those pieces and looking at them through different lenses and different size grains so that they have more information. Information is power, knowledge is power. They have more information in order to make better decisions. So that's kind of that work that we're working in right now. Thank you.
Yeah. And that's big work, by the way. That's going to take us.
Could take a bit.
Yeah, right. The last bullet, decrease opportunity gaps, the key transition points. The transition points for us is when students come into our system, pre-K to elementary school, and there's lots of, Steve's doing a class, I didn't push that.
Sorry, trying to clean off the computer desk here, so.
When Steve's doing a training now about what pre-K should look like, really need to look at kids as they come into our system. The next really big transition is elementary and middle school. And what we're working at with elementary, like 5th graders, for example, they take a math assessment. And so when they go, the math assessment will be based on those key standards that we're talking about. So when they go from, say, 5th grade to 6th grade, that assessment, that benchmark assessment will follow them. And so when teachers get them, they'll know where their skills are lacking, and we can start automatically like intervening on that right away. And so we don't wait like a month or 2 or 3 before we get into the intervention. We do it from the get-go because we have that data that's out there.
Are they doing the intervention in their classroom? So
Yes, yeah, that's part of it, yeah. And we'll talk about intervention in a second. Thank you. I paid you to say that. So, and the last one is really the high school to post-secondary. One part about this is when you talk to kids, you ask them when they go to college, some kids go to college, and you say, so did you have to take remediation classes? In other words, were you ready for the one-on-one level classes? And if the answer is no, then we have a pretty good indicator of what we need to do differently at high school level, right? Or do we, like a lot of times kids get prepared for a career, and so do we give you the career skills you really needed in order to show up every day and do a good job there? And if the answer is no, then we haven't done a data point there. So these are some of the data points that we're looking at as collecting as a system. So goal 3 is really around community partnerships and connection measures. One is the first bullet there, number of students engaged in student-led activities and events. One thing I'll say is that we've done quite a bit of this already, and the most powerful voices that we have in all of our trainings has always been kids. We did a training with principals and our central office leadership last year, where we brought in a group of, I think it's like 15 or 16 kids, and by far, the principals say that's the most powerful training that they've experienced in their entire career. And it wasn't because we said anything profound, it was kid voice that were talking about their own dignity and thinking about like, how do we actually approach conflict in a different way. Very powerful. When we went to PTR, we did the same thing. We brought in some students that are talking about their own stories. And these are students that I wouldn't say are in the leadership classes, right? They're not the kind of kids that you would say when you're walking around are going to be the jocks. They're the kids that you would say are experiencing probably issues in school. In fact, every time I've ever done this, I'm sweating bullets because I don't know if they're going to show up every single time. But they do, they show up, and when they do, there's some pretty amazing things that happen. Culture Unity Night, a lot of you were there for that. I mean, it's powerful when you get student voices out there. Are you okay? Working on that, right? Okay.
Yes.
All right, good job. And then the clubs leadership teams at both the middle school and high school are looking at community service projects where they connect with the community. Last year, the elementary schools collected, I don't know how many pounds of food. I think Ed and I threw a backstop trying to load at the truck. So there's lots of connections that we have with the kids. Second bullet, students and family accessing community partnership resources. This is something that Chris, maybe you can talk about this somewhat, because I used your data and your stuff.
Well, one of the things that we did in the fall and the spring was basically show you how students were accessing the resources, including our mental health resources, including our community resources, such as the food bank, our substance abuse prevention work through our coalition, as well as our student assistance person in the schools. And so we'll continue to do that this year. We also have a new MOU with Multicare / Greater Lakes to provide additional mental health support this year. So that's a brand new one. And then the second one is, which hasn't started yet, is through the foster care system. And the foster care system is now providing graduation assistance professionals to each district in the state. And that was funded through OSPI. And so we currently have 9 foster students in our system at the high school level. And so those 9 will be supported through this graduation assistance person.
So does that help them with what they're going to do after they graduate?
Right, that's the whole purpose, is to align, to help make sure they have the support they need, work with the teachers and administration in order to help support, to support their graduation goals and dreams. And part of being in the foster care system, and there's some post-secondary opportunities for kids in foster care system to have most of their education paid. And so, and they'll help them, they will help them do that and make sure they get the resources they need to be successful. So that's on the horizon.
Wow, I didn't realize that because so many times they think that they're just dropped off.
Well, they are
They
dropped.
are unless there's somebody to connect them to
That's
those
right.
things.
They are dropped off. I mean, I'm not saying that doesn't happen.
No,
But there is a transition now, and the state is making it a priority.
I just was so shocked when I was in alternative high school. I mean, when you really think about it, when that foster child graduates, and if they're not, if no one has adopted them, it's like
they've got nothing.
Nothing.
They walk out and it's just like, oh my gosh, that's crazy, you know?
I'm sorry, the organization we have an MOU with is Treehouse. And Treehouse provides, they also provide advocacy, they also work at the state level to help support the foster care system as a whole.
Yeah, this is one of Chris's main superpowers, is that this work he's doing there. And I am trying to learn as much as I possibly can from him because it is amazing the work that's happening every day. So, third bullet down, family participation in student-led conferences. We have high participation rate at the elementary school. What you need to start thinking about is like at the middle and high school, how do we involve the high school and beyond plans? Because if a student's presenting, the parents will show every time, right? And it'll be the kind of kids that really probably need to have the parents show every single time anytime, right? We're looking for a way to get involved, and this is a great way to do that. Last bullet there, students assessing dual credit opportunities. 67.4%, this is in 21-22, completed a dual credit course. Now, did they pass it? Data doesn't say that, okay? But they completed it. They started it and finished it. 33 OHS courses offered that you can get dual credit in, either industry certification or some kind of published credit as part of that. So that's another one of our measures that are out there. Whole child, when we talk about whole child, one thing I promised every group I've met with is I say, we promise we will never weaponize data. And what happens when a lot of times we pull up data is we use that to sort of hold people accountable for that. But when you think about like the whole child and developing the whole child, it doesn't work. And so our data should tell a story about every kid that we have, and our data should inform that as well. So if you look at like how are we actually making that story around the whole child, that attendance rate is really, really important. The attendance rate last year, you can pull that up, was pretty bad. And you've got to think about like what happened last year, COVID, and then what were we required to do by law? So if a student had a close contact, we're required by law to send them home. And so our data for attendance, if you look at 21-22, it wasn't great. So OPS had percent absent 18 or more days, 45.9%. A lot of kids, right? PTR 56.3, and you go from there. I don't need to read it to you, but you look at it, it's pretty high. Compare that to pre-COVID times, you can see how much higher it really is and was at that time. I think that as we move forward and we start thinking about our post-COVID time, how do we actually engage kids and keep them here? And we don't know what's going to happen, with monkeypox or whatever is out there. But we need to figure out ways to engage kids. This is a pretty important intervention piece because if kids aren't present, they don't learn. And it's on us to figure out ways to be flexible and think about new ways of engaging kids. And one thing I'll say is that Chris yesterday showed me a really great way of really thinking about taking care of attendance at the elementary level. And can I get you to summarize that for us, sir?
Basically, in the past, we've had, and those of you who work at the elementary level, there are 2 attendance periods. And now we've created 4 attendance periods. Teachers don't, no extra work for the teachers. But it is at the building level, it really narrows down how much kids have actually missed versus having, for example, if somebody comes in midway through the first attendance period in elementary, they were counted as full day, they were attending full day, versus breaking the morning into 2. And then we also have a tardy period in there with info, so we can clearly see when kids are coming to school, when they're tardy, and when they're being pulled out of school at the end of the day. So you also have early release, how many kids are being released at the end of the day. Now our data shows that they're there full day. And so if you pull them out, and we'll actually have data regarding how many kids aren't being pulled out early. So because we have a 4-period day, because we have tardy period within each one of those, it provides guidance to the attendance secretary to clearly articulate the student's attendance at the elementary. We also, what we did too is, we had 72 reason codes for absences. We narrowed that down to 20. And 20 is the number of the ones that are accurately reflected for the report card. In other words, those are the ones articulated by the regulation. And so we didn't add any others. And so we wanted to make sure that we're clearly articulating not only when the kids are not there and when they're there, but also the reason why. And so we've narrowed down the number of codes to 11, the attendance codes, and then the reason codes we narrowed down to 20. And so because other buildings were using different codes for the same reason. And so it was really skewing our data. So next year, this data will be a little bit more fine-tuned, and we should be able to make better decisions with it.
The next bullet down where it talks about high school on-time graduation rate, I think this is a testament to our high school. As you saw the data earlier, and I'm going to try to go back in a slide and not screw everything up. Where it talks about 1%, 70.8% of ninth graders are on track to graduate, right? That means they failed one or more classes. But if you look at this data point, here, high school on-time graduation rate, this one right here, 92.1% in 21-22 graduated on time. That's an impressive data point, I would say, right? They've been working really hard to get kids caught up. Look at students with disabilities, still less than 80%, but still impressive given that original 70 mark. And then students from low-income families, 86%. That's a really impressive data point there. Doesn't mean it can't get better. Very impressive data point. Student protective factors. If you click on that visual, please, Steve. When we were first sitting down trying to figure out how we're going to measure this, someone mentioned protective factors. It took me a little while to figure out what we're talking about. But protective factors are like what gives you that grit, that resilience in school, because stuff happens, right? Kids experience trauma all the time. And so what are these factors that actually help them overcome that or persevere beyond that? So these are all those factors that are out there, like school safety, think about it, like neighborhood safety, access to healthcare, academic achievement. These are all things that we consider to be protective factors. And so if you go back to the original.
Aaron, when I saw this, I feel like I want all of our families to see this too. You know, as a parent, I kind of check myself against each one of these things, like how am I doing supporting my kids? And I thought this would just be something to share. And something to share that kind of just reminds parents, like that whole wheel, it's not just about the school supporting the kids on the whole wheel, but it's about us and our community. So I really like this piece. Thank you.
Well, and one thing I'll talk about, if you click on that dignity framework too, as I've been working with principals on this dignity framework, I'm really thinking about like how do we support kids with protective factors when stuff happens, how do they deal with conflict. A lot of them are saying, well, I need to be a better father, or I need to really think about my relationships differently from this way. So when we talk about like protective factors and how we actually are educating people and really doing professional development, it doesn't just deal with our lives in school. It's not about the 6 or 7 hours you're in school. It's about what you do for your entire life. So these are all elements of dignity. Now dignity is different. I don't want to do a presentation on this next month. But dignity is different than respect. Like a lot of us say we demand respect. Respect is really important. It's in most of our handbooks. Respect is number 1. But respect is earned or lost. It's something that is based on your deeds. So like if you respect me, it's because I did something really good. But I can lose that tomorrow, right? You saw me do something really bad, I could lose it. Dignity, no matter what, you have it because you're a human being. No matter what. And so if you think about how we interact with our students, how students interact with us, if we have this as our foundational, like we say that no matter what you've done, we will give you recognition for what you have done, right? No matter what, we're going to treat you with fairness. There's a big one for a lot of students, and they like this whole idea of when a teacher messes up, they kind of acknowledge that, right? That's a big one for kids. The biggest one for adults out of all these is accountability. That's what I'm finding over and over again. But if you think about, like, these are non-negotiables. This happens no matter what the kid's been through, no matter what the adults have done, this is how we treat one another. This is our foundation. So it changes how we interact with one another. If you scroll down a little bit, Steve, a little more.
Yeah, we know.
Yeah, we start talking about, like, what are the ways we can violate dignity, and we start thinking about, like, what happens in a staff lounge, for example, right? How do teachers talk about kids? And I know that maybe Grace and Michaela, you don't know this, but teachers, when they get together, they talk about kids, right? And so how do they talk about kids? Well, we need to think about these things. And then the last one's really around positive behavior. So K-8, we really looked deeply at, like, one of the reasons the kickoff's been so good is because all of our schools are re-examining how they interact with rules and how they set kids up and what's the clarity around expectations across the building. And I'll say across every single one of our schools, things have tightened up a lot in terms of communicating what's expected and talking about how we're going to support kids throughout that. And I'll talk about tiers of intervention here in a second, but if I'd say that we had one big celebration between August and now, this is it. That we have every single building where kids know what's expected of them, and we have systems in place to help kids understand that across our system. And then I'll go to the last one. So the last one's really around student support systems. Last year, right around fall, I introduced that big umbrella where I talked about different elements of our multi-tiered systems of support. And so if you look at like what are our multi-tiered systems of support, it deals with things like how do we talk about behavior? When kids are struggling academically, what do we do around that? The social emotional learning, kids are lacking that skill, what do we do around that? And so we have these different tiers of intervention that we deal with kids. So like tier 1 would be every single kid gets this support because this is all the kids get, right? And so kids sometimes stray from that, so we, in the classroom, we do that correction. Tier 2 is where we give a little bit more support, right? These are like 15-20% of the kids really kind of need a little more support. And then tier 3 is like 5% of the kids really need something even beyond that. And so those are things we're working on. We have 2 brand new MTSS specialists that are doing a dang up job. They're going through and looking at systems in our elementary schools and uncovering a lot of things that this needs to be strengthened, and they're doing it. So it's not like, that's bad. They're like, that's bad, and I'm fixing it today. And so they're doing a lot of great work. One thing I'd love to be able to show you at some point is some pictures that I've taken, I'll show Steve earlier, about the work they're doing. Like they're doing, it's gonna sound crazy, but a bathroom rodeo. You think that's like crazy, but just talking about expectations of what you do in the bathroom is huge, like for kindergartners. And it made a difference. Like they were kind of messing around and being crazy, and I don't know elementary real well, but I'll tell you that I was outside one of the offices in the bathroom, was right next door, and it was nuts. Like it was nuts in the bathrooms. And so once they did this rodeo, like it changed. Like that day it changed, and I'm like, oh, that makes a difference for kids. So
it's not just kindergarten at the elementary school.
It's the adults too, that are saying?
No, I'm saying it's first, second, third grade.
Yeah, that's the difference. So it's impressive what just they're finding what good behavior is and teaching what how to do that. So I was impressed by that. Could you click on that Stanford report, please?
Quick question for you.
Yes.
Remember when we were in the other, we were in the elementary school and we had a meeting where there was an intervention on reading and they were repeating it every day.
Yes.
Was that part of this?
Yes. And
Okay.
so that's an academic intervention. So if you look at part of our new curriculum adoption, we've extended the amount of time that we're intervening around reading and writing, for example, right?
Yeah.
And so they have these blocks of time where we're looking at the support, where all the kids kind of get taught things. And then we start differentiating, like putting kids in different groups, depending on what they need. So because we have that guaranteed viable outcome piece, right? We guarantee every kid's gonna get this. And so we need to make sure that we have intervention in place during the school day, so that when they show that they can't do it, they have something in place to help them get up to that place and accelerate that learning. So it's kind of a cool deal. Like actually look at this curriculum, it's actually all planned out for us. So pretty neat stuff that's happening. Yeah. This is called the Stanford report, and what's really interesting about this is that it takes every school in the entire United States and it plots it. So all these are little teeny tiny dots. And so the 2 axes, which you can't really see right now, one deals with income, and the other one deals with, we get 1 year's growth from 1 year's instruction, right? And so the horizontal one is, if you're right on that line, then we got 1 year's growth from 1 year's instruction, right? The other line, the vertical line, is socioeconomically, like where does our community fall compared to all the other ones? Like, you know, what's our wealth factor here, right? And so Orting is that little teeny tiny red dot right there. So that's where we fall. And this is kind of old data. This is from I think 2018, 2019. But they will come out with a new report as pretty much everyone in the nation stopped testing during COVID. And so they're basing us on the standardized tests that are out there. And so what we're looking for, especially with this, is looking for more than a year's growth for a year's worth of instruction. Now, the reason I say more is because remember the data that I showed you around SBA? Remember the number of kids that didn't meet standard? So we have to not just be, remember that horizontal line is what we're looking at, we need to be above that line or we're never gonna catch up, right? And so when we look at this goal, what are we doing in our buildings? What are we doing on a big level, like a macro level, but also on a micro level, we do with individual kids to really get that more than a year's growth from a year's worth of instruction, right? Because 1 year is not enough. And so that's what this goal is all about. So you go back, Steve. So if you look at achievement for student subgroups, we're looking at removing systemic barriers. What are some barriers that we have? Well, one barrier that we have as a system is really thinking about, like, do we actually teach the right things? Talked about that before. Our practice and learning, are we actually doing targeted intervention? Are we making learning accessible for every kid that's in the classroom? Third bullet down talks about opportunity gaps for students. We have some MTSS practices that are out there. Thank you, Steve. So these are all the, what I call tights. And so in meeting with principals, and really assistant principals are the ones leading this work in their buildings, but this is what has to happen in every single building. But we'll guarantee by the end of this year, that we'll have something in place around every one of these. You've already seen a lot of progress on all 3 tiers of intervention. Tier 1 is like for everybody again. Tier 2 is like for 20%. Some kids need that. And then Tier 3, the last one, is really about a targeted group. Very few kids need that. So these are all the tights that we're insisting that every building has. So you got Steve. Thank you. So if we look at push-in support, side-by-side math, what's happening at the secondary schools. I talked about what already happened at the high school, where they take that 1 year of integrated math and made it 2 years. Middle school, they're talking about side-by-side classes, which I go and learn math before I go into my math class, so give you the foundational support before I walk in there. These are all things that we're doing for you, hopefully. So also we've added a counselor, we've added an assistant principal, and we have those 2 MTSS SEL specialists that are part of our closing our opportunity gaps. Risk factors, we created dynamic risk groups with a program called Homeroom. And this, what's really cool about this program is that we can decide what are the risk factors for kids. Like one risk factor could be attendance, right? The other one could be they are failing a class. Another one could be like, maybe they got in trouble 3 times, right? And so what it does is it dynamically sort of generates a list of kids based on the risk factors that we pick. And it can change every single day. And the cool thing about Homeroom, as a principal, I would get an email on Monday on who those kids were. And so we can target those kids for help. And what's happening at every school is they're now meeting with the leadership teams, talking about who are the kids that really need the most help. And it's dynamic, so if we intervene and it works, we know it, right?
I love that.
It's kind of a cool program.
I love that.
We're also looking at professional learning, we talked about that. And then the qualitative measures, really humanizing data, I talked about that, telling a story, really encouraging principals. Hopefully when they present their SIP plans to you, they're going to tell a story about their school based on the data that's out in the direction we're going in. So I'm not talking way too much tonight, but I really appreciate your patience and your questions are good. I had to cover a lot of stuff for our entire system, but we're coming back to these measures over time, so I really appreciate all these measures.
Can I ask one thing?
No.
So,
Yes.
so when you're looking at engagement, you're looking at if the student's engaged in learning, but are we also looking at as if they're engaged in the building as a whole? Like kids like to come to school to see their friends. I mean, that's their number one reason they say. So, but there's like a lot of kids that don't have, like, you know, I feel they're just like kind of by themselves or something. So are we doing anything to kind of help them get more included in the?
Yeah, if you remember back a couple of slides ago, it talked about like student engagement outside of the classroom, so like after school, so the clubs.
That's those, okay.
Yeah, so we're looking like clubs.
Like in
tons of
recess
clubs
even
out there.
or something.
Exactly,
Okay,
right.
okay.
And getting them involved in something other than their classroom.
Like elementary teachers. Okay, good. I think it's really good. I love that we're actually looking at the soft skills and saying, look, we're gonna do something about these because they impact learning.
That's really the big idea. We don't have percents or concrete data on some of these pieces, and so where we don't have those, we know that's what we value and want to bring. We have to think of creative ways through what we see, the anecdotes, the stories, what students are talking about, what the community is talking about. And so we think that combination of qualitative and quantitative data in there is the right way forward to help us make sure we're making progress. And really the next step is to not only build the baselines from what we have or what we don't have to build that baseline, then think through how do we keep that story going through 2025 and beyond so we can measure our progress over time, not just from this year's slides. So that's part of our ongoing conversation as a cabinet that will influence your school improvement plans that you see. And what we want to come back to next fall is now that we have an even deeper baseline, what do we see in terms of the system moving? That will inform greater strategic goals over time, because they'll be a little bit more nested or targeted in our work that we built on this year.
But I'm encouraged because we have multiple systems looking at it. I mean, you know, the Healthy Child Survey, you can always keep going back to that, and then participation, and so there's multiple points to look at the kids from. And so I think it's, you can't make an arrow that's going to shoot correctly every single time, but if you have a lot of different perspectives, then, you know, you're gonna hit the bullseye more often.
I actually feel like we're changing the way we do school, which I'm excited about. Yeah, so.
Yeah, I was going to say, Erin, don't apologize for talking a lot. We have very high expectations of this team and the work that you're doing, and so I think this is the right work to be talking about. So thank you.
I love the presentation. Thank you, Erin. I like the little Lincolns. I feel like you need your own web page. Because some of this stuff, I was like, oh, I'm guilty of that. I need to stop that. You know, when some of that stuff just hits home. And I like your quote, no data is a weapon. Yeah. Love it.
Thank you very much.
Very good, thank you. All right, we have 8 items on the consent agenda. So I'd like to open. Oh, just gonna totally skip over those. They're so important also that I really, strategic goals and measures is, that's how you work. It's my brain, it's good. Are there any comments before I call for a vote on this?
On the second reading?
Yes, second reading. Not third reading? Okay. Then I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the second reading of policy considerations.
Thank
All
you.
of those.
Seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Now, consent agenda. All right. 8 items. Any discussion?
I would like to move number 5 to our next meeting. So we have got more time for getting some answers on to kind of like what some of the program entails, just more detail.
Anybody?
I don't object to that, but can I request? I don't, when you have your questions about this particular topic, can you put that in writing so that we can all get the review back?
Yeah.
I would love to see what the answers are to your questions on the topic. So if you put them in writing and then we all get to get the answer back.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Also, that will help because some of them are new, and so we might even be able to help you with some of those things. Because this isn't new.
Yeah.
I remember this from before. So, yeah, it'd be great that we can share the dialogue.
Yep, for sure. Okay, so everybody's okay with using it forward? Is that all right for you, Keith?
It will. We are compelled to have a threat assessment process, and many districts, including ours, is not able to fully fund a team of qualified professionals with the broad breadth and depth that we need to really conduct a thorough threat analysis. So the regional cooperative allows us to engage in regional resources where we can get mental health, drug, alcohol counseling, psychologists, the team that we would really want to determine whether or not a threat exists to the safety and welfare of our school facility. So PSCSD allows us to enter into that for a very small price point versus us having to contract all of those separate entities on our own would be many, many more times as expensive as what that regional threat cooperative allows us to do. So really, that's what that does. That MOU allows us to enter into that agreement and utilize the resources at ESD when the time comes. There were cases last year we were conducting multiple threat assessments because we don't want to allow a student to return to school until we know it's safe to do so, and under what conditions would we set to make that safety known, and that our team knows what to do to support that student.
And I know that we've used PSE, the Educational Service District, for a variety of things. I remember that the police officer, Officer Boone, he goes there for his training, and that, so I know that we've done some teacher training for it. And the state provides some resources to them, recognizing that school districts themselves can't lift that huge thing, so that's how the state shares those services.
Correct.
It's their model.
We don't have the ability currently to conduct a higher level threat assessment. I couldn't provide clarity to the board on what the potential implications are because our previous MOU would have expired at the end of this fiscal year. So if you push this to the next month, and if we're in a situation where we have a high level threat analysis, we may be in a position where we're unable to conduct that threat analysis.
That's fair, I can ask them now. So who's actually assessing the students and deeming them a threat? Who's
Let's
the
invite
person doing
Director
that?
Willis, and he can speak to what happens when a threat arises, both within our system, and how does the safety cooperative come into play.
So we started the process about 4 years ago, and it was a requirement for all school districts in the state to have a threat assessment process. We actually have a board policy and procedure that actually directs our work. Then we create a practice, and what happens is the Puget Sound ESD just last week provided training for our team. We do annual training each year. The first week, we do it within the first 2 weeks. So we train all of our school psychologists, counselors, administrators. So all of our administrators, all of our counselors, all of our school psychologists have received the training. And so when they're called to it and there's a threat, we'll say a bomb threat. A bomb threat, each school team comes together and completes a protocol. It's called the Salem-Kaiser model. You can look it up online. And we utilize that protocol to determine whether or not the threat is credible or not. If our team is unable to determine or feel comfortable with the results of that threat assessment, then we call the Puget Sound ESD to solicit, I guess is the right word, ask for a tier 2 or level 2 threat assessment. And that's when they bring in resources from outside the school district, including law enforcement, in order to help support us in determining whether or not, number one, is it to continue to be a threat? Number two, then they provide resources to the student and to the school district in order to help support that student. The whole focus is to determine a threat and build a support system around the student. The purpose is not to keep students outside of school, but in each case, it's been a wonderful, I didn't expect it to be a good experience, but it's been a good experience in the fact that parents feel supported, the kid feels supported, and they understand that we're here to support them so the kid comes back to school. In most cases, kids just made a dumb move. But in other cases, the cases are actually pretty serious. And so we actually make sure that those resources are wrapped around that student or students in order to help support them so they can continue to live and be educated in our school district. But it is a requirement that we have a threat assessment system.
Is it a requirement to go through this agency for this?
No, and the reason why we use the agency again is to provide our training and support. And I think it's 5,000, is it 5,000? It's right around $5,000. Yeah, and so honestly, that's cheap. And so, and by that I'm saying is that I just utilize all their training. They come in, they provide the training. They're actually going to be providing the training in 2 weeks. 3 weeks for our crisis team. So when our crisis team comes together and if there's a threat, we actually mobilize our crisis team to help support as well. And so they're there to support us as we need. And then I just say I need a level 2, and they're bringing the resources together, and then they schedule the time with us.
So my first question, tier 1, is the folks here, administrators that are here, you get trained on how to assess a threat, and then you guys are the ones
Right.
assessing. So what happens when a student is deemed a threat by someone?
Right, so if we continue to believe there's a threat, number one, we create a support plan, but if we're not confident in our support plan, we'll go to a level 2. If it feels like, for example, in a couple of different cases that students had access to weapons and guns, and they figured out the combination. And so, so what do we do now? The parent's not listening to us. They're not working with us. So we bring in the Puget Sound ESD to help support us. We're part of the whole thing. They just bring another level of expertise in to help us support us with the most complicated situations. So it's actually, it actually helps support us in the long run. It's also, when you use a evidence-based protocol, it actually not only protects this district, but it also protects the student. As things change in the state, as the protocol changes and amended, the Puget Sound ESD again comes back and says, you know what, you need to change your forms, you need to change your format. So they keep us up to date and provide us those ongoing resources. I don't have the time to look for those resources. They provide us those resources as we go.
Okay, thank you. That answers my question. It was just new to me, so I just needed a little
Yeah,
bit more
and
clarity.
it's also, if you take a look at the policies and procedures too, take a look in there. There's a policy and a procedure related to threat assessment. And the Puget Sound ESD helps us implement that procedure.
Yeah, I wanted to point out, the one thing that's great is when you already have a structure worked out, think of a fire drill. You already have the structure, so you're in an emergency, but you know what to do. So your brain can take care of the other things. So that's the wonderful thing about somebody else and this structure, because then the administrators, the counselors, the teachers involved, they can deal with the immediate things instead of worrying about, okay, now what's next?
Yeah, I've done about 30 of these, myself, over the last 4 years. Last year was a tough year, I'll tell you, after COVID. But I've done those, and I think the school on their own did about 3 to 4, very few, but I've actually enjoyed doing it, only because I believe it brings the family and the school together, the problem solved together, along with local resources. I actually feel like
So it's bringing in the parents or the guardians and explaining the situation. It's not just walking up and saying, your kid's a threat and we need to talk.
No.
Because that's what I'm just,
No,
calling
and-
someone a threat is, I want to be very clear who's doing it and how they're getting that assessment.
Yeah, and so part of the protocol includes a witness questionnaire, a parent or guardian questionnaire. And so that piece there is really important. What I find most useful is when the parents are there. Because they're engaged in the process, they're helping answer the questions, and we learn something. We learn something about what's going on in the home that may be contributing to the circumstance. And so having their involvement, I think is essential. We don't know all the information, and the protocol allows us to solicit that information from families, and also teachers. They may have heard something like 2 weeks ago. It's like, I heard this, it didn't seem, then all of a sudden it comes out. So having that information from our teachers and our other staff and our counselors is really helpful as well.
All right, thank you. That helps. Yeah, I'm fine keeping it. I just needed to know a little bit more. I really appreciate that.
Chris, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Impromptu details.
Okay.
All right, any further discussion? Then I will take a motion to approve the consent agenda items 1 through 8.
I move to approve items 1 through 8 on the consent agenda.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. All right, action items. Minimum basic education requirements, line 40. Board memo. This is prepared by
share with you that we have put together something new. It's called the miscellaneous hourly wage schedule. And the purpose of this is kind of multi-purpose, I guess, in that we have positions that are hourly and on call. It's not like being a substitute in the school district, but it is for positions that support our athletics and activities. We have been up to this point paying minimum wage, and then we had done some incremental increases, but honestly, it is difficult, extremely difficult to get people to cover these roles for a minimum wage pay for that. And so in talking with our union partners, OXA, which oversees athletics and activities, separate from hourly positions, but they are the ones that provide coaching and look for support through people holding these roles. It was felt that if we went to a rate that was maybe a little more than McDonald's begins our employees at locally, and had a reasonable rate of pay in there, that they would be better equipped to be able to fill those roles. We also had, and so $20 was the rate that we came up with. The purpose of having it on a schedule was so that it's not only approved by the board, should you consider and approve that, but also to make it clear for people in a effective communication way, so that they can look at a document rather than hearing from a friend what they might earn for that hourly rate. The other piece on here is at the bottom, it's a paid internship. It's something that we came up with. It's new. It's not something we've done before. We had the opportunity to employ a new counselor, and you heard about that again this evening. But in addition to that, we had a counselor that needed to take a leave, so it felt like a net zero because we brought in one and then we had one go on leave. Well, we were at a point where we just could not find a candidate. However, we came up with, we were able to identify a candidate who has completed her master's program, is well prepared for this, but did not have the certification. And so in speaking with this candidate, we felt that if we could have this part-time candidate come in, provide this support during this first semester leave of absence for our other employee, if we had what we called an internship for this person to be able to fulfill that role, that we could be successful in meeting the needs of kids. So that is where that came from on the schedule. So we would ask for your consideration and approval of this newly developed wage schedule.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Students eligible for some of these roles?
Yes?
16.
16 has limitations to the number of hours that they can work, but typically one event or limited events would not exceed that.
That's a great role for
Like you're creative.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know.
So this includes when you sell tickets at the games?
It does.
Oh, I did that with Dawn Ellis a couple of times, yeah, you didn't get paid enough for that.
I appreciate the consistency that we'll be able to apply
Yeah,
this
yeah,
and just being upfront and open with how these roles are compensated. I didn't realize we didn't have a schedule for these, so if there's any questions.
I think it's a great idea.
Yeah. Very good. All right, so I will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the 22-23 miscellaneous wage schedule as presented.
Second that?
Thank you, all in favor? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I believe you're up next.
I am. I'd like to share with you a request for an out-of-endorsement assignment. This, as a reminder, is for it's something that is approved or considered at the local level. It's not something that we apply to the state certification office to receive. So in this case, and there was some information provided to you, we have an employee who is at the middle school teaching English and social studies, or at least that's what we wanted her to teach. She actually was willing to and preparing to take a test. It was not completed because there are certain testing schedules by the first day of school. And in order to have the flexibility on our master schedule, we would like your approval at the board level for an out of endorsement for this candidate, and that would cover the period of time until she obtains that additional endorsement.
Questions? Can I get a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second? Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thanks again. If you don't mind me remaining, and one more. We have a limited certificate request. You may recall that when we have, this is at the state level, we have conditional certificates. And it's in the case that we have a candidate who has shown success in our selection process to be considered. This one's a little bit different in that the employee who came on board, it has a test to take, and sometimes we have to take those tests more than one time to find that success level, even if you're off just by one. So we want to keep everybody legal and working in the classroom. She's a wonderful candidate who's doing great things for our kids, and we would just ask that you authorize our being able to request that conditional certificate, just to patch the time until that next test period where we're confident there will be success.
When's the next test period?
I don't know the date off the top of my head.
Oh,
We
but it's
can
like
get that.
pretty
It's
soon?
usually each month.
Or less? Okay.
I do want to ask, is the state doing any better at getting back about certificates? I know that for a while there, it was really backed up. Are they?
They are doing a wonderful
Okay.
job.
Okay.
We had,
I
I
didn't know
just
if it
want to
was-
share an example. We had one candidate who came to us without current fingerprints, and you cannot get a certificate without fingerprint clearance. Fingerprints in the past were taking 3 to 6 weeks to clear. They took 3 days, and the certificate was issued the next morning within hours.
That's
Wow.
way better than the month they were so backed
They
up.
were backed up, I believe it was 3,700 certificates, and ours came in the next morning.
Wow.
That's good. All right, can I get a motion?
Motion to approve the request is presented.
I second that.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Debbie.
Wayne, are you responsible for all these Chromebooks going to the surplus?
No,
Yes.
parts of them.
Now this explains the whole lease process that I questioned last year.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, can I get a motion?
I would move to approve the disposal of the surplus items that were presented.
I'll second that.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Bathroom. We don't use that bathroom.
Well,
Bathroom is closed off.
hey,
You can't use that bathroom.
I should let the students have the Chromebooks and do with it as they wish. All right. We made it to board
a
comments.
man's bathroom.
Anybody have anything on their mind?
No, just thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
I have a report from students for you.
Yes.
Every single student that I asked, how is school starting out this year? Good, and compared to last year, better. Every single student. Even the ones that I don't think are actually going to that. So, they're happy, so. Yeah. Well, it's like they're have some online or something, or they're in the district, but they're online, but they're like, everything's better. I'm like, all right. So, good job, that you're doing great.
Well, the high school, the science teacher did a great job teaching the difference between a volcano and a lahar, because I had these high school boys in my living room when Mount Rainier literally goes, and they're like, the whole science class went outside to watch it, they were telling me about it, and they had been confused as to what a volcano was and what a lahar was, until it was real life lesson, so. They felt better about it.
I'm kind of concerned that they got all the way to high school and all those drills.
Yeah, really.